As I said, take a comfortable seat and start to slow things down. Focus on your breathing. We'll take a couple minutes before we start our discussion about yin and go from there. Just beginning to relax and come into the space. Back to your body, deepen your breathing a little more. Take any little movements you like. Come back up to a seat when we're ready, and we will have a little discussion. And thank you guys for coming today. It's awesome to see all of you here. I really wanted to do a yin class ever since I took the teacher training a few months ago and started to do some yin myself. I'm actually pretty new to yin, so it's good to see that some of you haven't done it before, are interested in and wanting to see what it's about. So in a traditional yoga class, in our traditional vinyasa, we're mostly working muscle. Muscle is more of an elastic type tissue. So when you're working, and it has more water content. So you are better off when you're working muscles to do a lot of movement and stretching, right? They like to be warmed, they like to be stretched. John, maybe I could have you swap or move to the side a little bit. Oh, okay. Well, maybe she couldn't see. Okay, yeah. The muscles prefer that sort of movement, right? That dynamic movement. They like to be warmed, and that's why we spend, at least in my classes, if you've been in my class, we spend a good 15, 20 minutes warming the body, making sure that we're ready to go, and then we get into those deep stretches. But those are hitting muscle, right? So about half of our flexibility, though, does not come from muscle. The other half comes from the deeper tissues, the connective tissues in our back, connective tissues that connect muscle to bone to bone, and our fascia, which goes deep into the body, kind of holding us all together. Fascia is around the organs, holds everything in place. So that can be a source of that. We're not able to move as much. We got some tightness, right? A lot of that, if you've got chronic tightness, that's perhaps not with the muscle, that's with the deeper tissue, right? So if we're ignoring those deeper tissues, then we're ignoring our body's potential to be more stretchy, and we're not helping our joints as much. Generally, when we're moving in a yoga class, what are we doing? We're cueing to tighten the core, right? We're cueing to tighten because we're moving and maybe leaning forward. Think about like a humble warrior or something like that. We want to tighten and move in, so we're protecting our joints. Here, we don't want to do that at all. We don't want to have any tension in the body. So as we go through this, and as you come out of this class, it's not going to be an easy practice. It's not about holding poses. It's actually about releasing, and that's that mental portion of it. That's difficult. So we'll talk about that. My focus is to get us to understand how we get into the poses safely, and then from there, you are totally free to explore and do what feels good. So it is not as much about me telling you what to do and how to move. It's about you listening to your body and seeing where you have sensation, or where you want to create sensation, or if you're having pain, then backing off. So I'm not going to talk about keep your hips level. I'm not going to talk about, put this here, do this. It's about you to kind of figure out and understand with your body. So, so that's all the good stuff of yin. So those deeper tissues, they have less water content and they're not as elastic. They're more what's called plastic, which means they stay in shape for a very long time. They're tougher, right? So in order to get into that, we're not going to warm up at the beginning of class. We're not going to do a bunch of these movements. We're going to go into a movement and relax and let things kind of happen. Once we get into the pose, there's going to be an adjustment period. You're going to have up to 1 minute to 2 minutes of like, okay, this is not the right thing. I need to adjust. I need to move a little bit, or that wasn't quite right. But once you get comfortable, I want to encourage you to stay static in the pose and just kind of let things, come down. So for instance, if we're in a seated position and we're doing what's called caterpillar pose, which is a seated forward fold, it's just, and they're named differently because they're for a different purpose, that's why. But we're just gonna let the head droop down, right? We're not gonna worry about having all this alignment and staying straight and tightening core and all that. We're just letting it droop. What's gonna happen is that will be putting some stress on the joints. And I say stress, and we might be thinking, oh, we don't wanna do that. We actually do. We wanna have a little stress on the joints because that's healthy. It keeps it hydrated and will keep it strong. So we're getting into the pose. We are, we're making friends with the pose, I like to say. And then we are in that meditative mode for a little while. So we stay for a while. Our poses are somewhere between 3 and 6 minutes generally. So we're not gonna be standing, we're not gonna be warrior for 6 minutes. They're mostly floor poses, hip work. Yeah, we could if you want. A lot of hip work, a lot of glute and core and all the good stuff, shoulders, and back especially. And we're gonna allow that to happen. We're gonna allow that stretching and stress. We don't call it stretching, we call it stress on the joints to happen. And then it becomes kind of a mental game of like, how do I relax more? How do I, in this pose, and I'll talk you through that as we do it, how do I, in this pose, eliminate any restrictions that I can, right, to get deeper? Maybe I do need to move my leg a little bit, and then it feels a little better, or I'm having a little pain and I need to back off, something like that. So it's that process of thinking. And then if you're not feeling enough into the pose, staying curious and going a little deeper. And like I said, I'll cue all this stuff while we're doing it. And then finally, when we're done with the pose, we want to come out slowly, and we're going to feel like really a rush of energy. Like if you've been in a position like you're under the sink trying to fix something and you come out, you might have that cool sense of, stuff is flowing in. That's actually what's happening. There are fluids going into the joints, rehydrating the joint and making it stronger. And it's saying, oh my gosh, we got a problem here. We had stress. Let's go in and fix everything. So that's what the body is doing, is it's flooding that area and working on healing it. So very, very good for us. This sort of a practice is pretty much good for anybody, but especially if you are very active or if you are not as active, right? I mean, that counts pretty much everybody. So if you are sitting a lot during the day, which is like me, because I work at a desk, or if I'm chasing the kids and running around, then I could be on either end of that scale, right? So I need this practice even with, and that's what I found, even with doing vinyasa classes several times a week, this was still really powerful for me when I did it. So I hope you guys have similar results to what I had. I'd love to hear some feedback and see what we need to do in terms of like supporting you guys and doing more of these in the future if you like. Any questions that I haven't covered that you want to ask at this point?
Would you add a class of yin for beginners and not people interested and they like it?
Perhaps. I don't really have enough hours in the week right now to add a third class, but I'm definitely thinking about it. Like it was so helpful for me, and that's why I wanted to introduce this to you guys and get your feedback and see what we thought about it. But definitely something that's on my mind. Anything else? Yeah.
If
you're hypermobile, and guidance on how far is too far?
That is a great question. Yes, so you again have to be mindful of that, right? In when you're going into your pose, if you're very, very mobile, especially in the hips. But it's okay to go a little deeper because we are going slow, right? So you don't have to be as mindful as with a vinyasa class where we're moving into things. What you may need is, I'll give an example, like for a puppy pose, right? We've got our elbows down. You may need something to lift your elbows off the mat a little bit, like, you know, having a couple blocks under your arms, and I'll cue some of that. Like if you need that extra space because you're not feeling it, that's okay. Because we're really kind of static, there is actually less of a risk of injury as long as you're being sensitive to what's happening internally, right? So yeah, so we should be good with that. Okay, if there are no more questions, why don't we get started? So like I said, our mode is to find these poses. I'll explain how to get in. We're going to stay for a bit, but we're going to stay curious, and then we're going to see how that helps in our body. What I didn't mention is after each pose, after that 3 to 6 minutes, we do what's called a digestive pose. So for something where we've got a lot of flexion into the knees or something, a lot of knee bending, we're going to straighten out the legs and move around. And it's not really a yoga pose. It's just kind of bringing the feeling back to those limbs or joints when we're done. So those are called digestive poses because they help us digest and start to get those fluids moving back again. So, all right. Well, I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started. We are going to start with our caterpillar pose that I mentioned. So you may want to have your bolster for this one. And the reason we use tools in here for holding ourselves is not to hold us in a position where we don't feel something, right? We want to be, it's not restorative yoga. We want to be in a position where we are going to still feel something. It should be, as a baseline, mild to medium sensation. And again, that's different. It's going to be different for everybody. So what I'm going to do here with my caterpillar, I'm going to sit straight. I'm going to have my legs straight out in front of us. So just like a forward fold from here, I am going to come forward, hinging at the hips like a regular forward fold, right? But from there, I can let the head droop as much as I like. If that's causing pain, using our bolster, there's a couple ways we can use our bolster. We could actually have it like this if we wanted to. Put our head down on it if we need that support. But if my flexibility kind of ends here, then I want to make sure that I'm supported and find this pose.
The back needs to be straight or?
The back can be bent, right? Because we're letting gravity kind of do the work for us. All right, so try to get comfortable. Use your tools as you need for that, and start making friends with the pose. Start thinking about what you may need to change in the short term to release into this and what you need out of it. So again, it's okay to be hanging out in space a little. You can still use muscle to hold up your neck, for instance, but just very little, very, very little, as much as you need to not make it hurt. So as we do this practice, I want us to be thinking about the time of the year and what this may mean for us in our practice and in our lives. So we'll be thinking about spring, which is a time for renewal and rebirth, of course. This is evident as we observe nature with the return of vibrant colors, new life coming into being, and the warmer weather bringing animals and humans out of hibernation. In traditional Chinese medicine, the element of wood represents spring and is manifested in the liver and gallbladder meridians. The function of wood is movement, expansion, activity, change. It is the home of new ideas, new thoughts, transformation, and hope. Let's think about these things for a few minutes as we get deeper into our pose. As we said, staying curious, creating any movement that we need to get more comfortable. Once we're there, relaxing and releasing. Finding that correct amount of intensity for us. Noticing if we're having any pain, that we back off. Making any adjustments we need. Trying to let gravity do the work here. Answer this question for yourself. What is keeping me from moving further into this pose? What restrictions am I putting on myself? Am I holding my breath? Do I have tension in my muscles? Am I feeling pain? In order for those yin tissues to be stretched and stressed, the muscles must be relaxed. About 30 more seconds, keep breathing. Slowly start moving up. You can use your hands to lift your head up. And we're going to come to our first digestive pose or counter pose. We're going to take our hands behind and drop the shoulders back, lift the chin up a little bit, and again, move real slow. This is our sunbather pose. Take any little movements you need to here. Start to feel that rush of energy come back in to the back body. So we're there for a little while. Nice deep breaths. Once we're ready, let's come up. And we're going to move next to a kneeling position. If you are having some pain in the knees, or if you have sensitive knees, definitely use a blanket or something to pad. We've got blankets, I think, in the back or over here. Grab one.
Yeah.
So we're going to come to kneeling, and this is a couple options here. If this right here is fine, and you don't want to go any further than this, and this still feels like a good stretch, then into the hips, that's okay. But I want to give an option for a toe squat. So we're going to curl our toes under and sit back toward our heels. If that is already painful, just by doing this, we're feeling some pain, take your hands to the mat and then use that to balance and then shift the hips back a little bit to see where you can find that it's comfortable. So we can adjust how much pressure we're putting on our toes. This would be probably the deepest that we want to go right here, having all that weight on the toes. This one's a little shorter, a couple minutes. Again, make friends with the pose. Make any adjustments you need in the short term to make it comfortable, and then stay curious. This practice is meant to support your body during the springtime to restore our balance. Bring new energy into the organ systems, nourish the digestive system, release tension and stress from the spine and hips, deep clean the energy channels. Keep breathing. Again, notice where you can relax, get deeper. We can start to think, what have I learned this past winter that I want to bring with me into the spring season? Twenty more seconds. We're in our toe squat. Let's tip forward a little bit, release some of the tension on the toes. And then we can slowly move to a tabletop position and take any movement here that we need. Maybe bring the feet flat and then curl the toes under. Start to get that feeling back. And notice any sensations after this pose that we're having. Take a few more breaths. All right, we're going to go from here into a dragon pose. A dragon you're going to recognize as low lunge or Anjaneyasana. So we're going to take the right leg forward. The left leg is going to be back. And we're going to, this is actually going to be a little bit more like a lizard because we're going to have our hands to the inside. So it's going to be hand, hand, foot. And if it's okay just to hang out here with your hands down like this and you're feeling all right with this, it's going to be a big stretch into the hips. If you want to go lower, if you have the flexibility to go lower, you may. We have our tools available that you can bring the ground up to you a little bit more. So if we're less flexible like I am, we may actually have two blocks down here like this for the head, or have the elbows down. So we're picking our height here. And I see some of you patting the knee as well. That's great. Yeah, we need that. So we're not trying to create, pain. We're trying to locate where we can stretch into this. So getting ourselves comfortable and aligned first, and then sinking into the pose. I do want to give a further option here if you want to take it, and that is to take the knee and bring it out to the side a little bit more. So that's that right knee coming to the outer edge of that foot, but only if that feels good. So these dragon poses can be very intense. So take your time. Make friends with this pose as you can. Being in a position like this can make us feel very vulnerable or scared. So if you're having feelings of anxiety, you're having some upset feelings, this pose is maybe causing that. What is happening during our poses is we are switching between our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Our sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight. I'm having pain, I'm uncomfortable, I'm scared. And then the parasympathetic is the calming sensations, that slower heart rate. They reduce the function of the amygdala, which is where we feel all our feelings, portion of the brain. So during our yin practice, we're going to be going between those two things. And that's okay. It is allowing us to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. One of my favorite phrases from when I was learning this in our teacher class is that you're learning, I think the quote was, you're learning a non-defensive attitude toward sensation. I'll say that again, it's a non-defensive attitude toward sensation. We're not fighting against our sensation. We are learning to exist with that sensation because it's part of us. we have had in the past, or we do now have anxiety, worry, learning to not be defensive against those sorts of sensations will help inoculate us against that sort of anxiety. Remember, mild to medium sensation here. For feeling really strong sensation, it's actually less productive than if we have mild to medium. So if you're going too far, try to dial it back a little bit. How can I become more relaxed in this pose? What do the words balance and renewal mean for me? Start to slowly move out of this pose. Take your time. Bring that knee back so you are coming back to a hands and knees position, tabletop. And we're going to take some side-to-side movement with the hips. We can bring the hands forward a little bit more and come to more like a plank. We want to stretch into the hip, a kneeling plank basically. The hips stretch. Take any movement forward and back or side to side that you like. Get that sensation back. Feel those fluids rushing into the joints, helping to nourish after we have done stress. When we're ready, let's take the left leg forward and we're going to go to the other side. So if you have different flexibility in this side, which is very common, you may need different blocks or different setup than you had on the other side, right? So be mindful of that and work on getting comfortable into the pose, doing the things that you need to do. And we're going to look for similar sensation to what we had on the other side. Since this is our first asymmetrical pose, we work it on both sides. It's kind of its own counter stretch, but we want to make sure that we're getting about the same sensation. Generally with the dragon pose, of course, we've got that long stretch into the hip on the right leg, position we're in now. On the left leg into the glute, lower back. We can also let the head hang here and have some release into the neck. So that's okay to do. We don't have to hold our head up if we don't need to, or if we don't want to. But again, if it's comfortable, if we need that support, use what you have. Let's think to ourselves, how is this practice going to influence my everyday actions and mindset? Because this is the first time for a lot of you, don't feel bad if you need to make those adjustments. The first few times I did yin, I was not understanding, even having done yoga for many years, I was not understanding the position I needed to be in, or what I was supposed to be feeling, because it is so different. It took a few times before I became acquainted with how my body works with the poses, because everybody's body is different. Everybody's position is going to look different. I actually see in this room 11 different ways of doing this pose, because that's how it works, right? We're all different, and that's fine. We just need to figure out for ourselves what's going to work and how we can make this comfortable, because they're very beneficial. We're in the most difficult part of this pose right now, as we are working with our mental endurance to stay through the pose and feel those switches between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems. And again, if we're not feeling it, finding what we can move to get into that mild to medium sensation. Slowly, let's move that leg back. Help it with your hands if you need. And then as before, take some movement, either side to side, forward and back, whatever feels good, into the hips. Get that little stretch. Take your time. When we're ready, we're going to spin the legs around and come to seated. And sort of like before in our sunbather pose with our hands behind and our shoulders are going to roll back, except we're going to have our feet on the mat. So our knees are going to be bent. We're coming to a deer pose, and sorry, I should have said we can have our bolster with us if we need in this pose. May not be necessary, but have it by you if you need it when we move into this. So we're going to take the knees and we're going to let them fall over to the left side. We're working on an internal rotation of the right hip for this. Extremely beneficial. So we can work the hands back a little bit. So our torso is sort of facing that right knee. There's that straight line. And then take your other foot and widen it, or bring it closer as you need. And we're just gonna let everything kind of drop down to the mat. What you can do from here is you can take your bolster and put it underneath you and lie back a little deeper into this pose. So you can get all the way down like this. If you're having a really hard time getting sensation in this pose because you're very flexible, what you can do is take a block and put it under your foot. I wouldn't recommend that unless you're really not feeling it into the hip. Remember, mild to medium sensation. So let's make friends with our deer pose. This pose really is about surrender. The dragon pose, we had to use some strength of the arms, potentially to hold us up. Here we're just letting gravity completely take us, just a little bit of shoulder and chest opening as well with the bolster underneath us. We're mostly concentrating on the hips. As always, make any little adjustments you need with bringing that left foot out a little more. Or if we're feeling some restriction, is it muscle that's holding up that right leg? What can we do to release that? In this pose, let's think about these things. How has winter created transformation for a rebirth into spring? What has happened in winter to create transformation for us that we're feeling right now? When we do our yin practice, it is important that the body is not too warm. So we couldn't do this like in a hot yoga studio, or if we've just finished a vinyasa, or if we've done a lot of exercise. We actually don't want that. It's not going to hurt us to be warmed up beforehand, but it's not going to have the benefits of all of this great stress, this healthy stress on the joints that we want. So the muscles actually need to be cold and cold-ish and relaxed. When we come out of the pose, we are feeling that rushing of energy and that rushing of fluid. Like I said earlier, that actually is what's happening as the joint is being hydrated. And there are a few things that come in. Specifically, these chemicals are called GAGs, glycosaminoglycans. So these amino acids are coming in and filling the joint with hydration. Slowly, let's lift the legs up. And this pose is also its own counter pose, but we are going to take a moment to bring the knees back and forth. Do a few windshield wipers here. See how that feels. And then as soon as we're ready, moving over to the other side, dropping that left knee down. And if we need to come up and see where our position needs to be, that's okay. And then we can lie back down once we feel like we're in the right spot. So we're gonna have the knees falling over to the right this time. Again, try to get similar sensation to last time. May not be in the same position, but similar sensation. So I mentioned the GAGs, the glycosaminoglycans that are coming in and hydrating. These specific acids attract water. So it's sort of like a sponge bringing water in to the joint to strengthen and hydrate. I'm sure most of you are feeling it by now. This is a very meditative practice, right? We're trying to get into that zone where we're relaxed, even though we may feel stressed due to the sometimes difficult poses. In this pose, let's think about the following phrase. What habits can I release and what can I adopt for new and healthier habits? Start to bring the knees up, back to center, and then take our windshield wipers back and forth. Let the body adjust and digest what we just did. All right, when we're ready, we're going to come back to our tabletop and we're going to want our blocks near us in case we need them. And you may be thinking by this point, well, we did the back, we did the hips. We're going to do anything with the shoulders and chest. Yes, so that's what we're going to do now. So in our tabletop, we're going to drop our elbows to the mat and we're going to come to melting heart pose. Which is where we let our head drop to the mat and we're letting our chest drop down as well. That's why we call it melting heart pose. And if we are really flexible into the shoulders, that's where we may need these blocks underneath the forearms, right? So the hips are going to stay high, but they're going to draw back. So there is a little bit of strength with this pose. Just to stay in that position. But what I'm not going to say, I normally say in a normal vinyasa class, is that if your mid back wants to round down, it may. You can. We're not pulling back with the hips and trying to keep the back straight, right? If you're not feeling anything, so if you've got your elbows down like this, and you're not feeling that at all into your chest and shoulders, then you may need to bring up your arms a little more. But if you're feeling it there, that's fine. One person, a close friend of mine that I work with sometimes, she said, I just feel like my face is smashed into the floor on this pose. And I said, well, yes, it's because you're hypermobile into your shoulders and letting your head come all the way down. So we do want to make sure that our head and neck are comfortable here. If the shoulders are coming down and the neck is coming back a little bit, that's okay as long as we're feeling comfortable. So again, I'm not going to tell you to be in a specific position here or to have a specific shape. This is about you to decide what you want to do. So make friends with this one. We'll be here for a few minutes as well. See what you need in terms of that support. This pose is much more about surrender than some of the others. We're really letting gravity take our heart toward the mat. And like I said, if your lower and or mid back want to droop a little bit into this position, that's okay. Letting gravity take you a little deeper. Really getting into all the nooks and crannies with this practice. Another thing that we want to make sure that we're not feeling besides pain is if we're having a lot of tingling sensations. If we're having tingling sensations, or if we're feeling our breath become ragged, we are too far into the pose. We're not going to get into a lot of it today, but Yin Yoga uses a lot of traditional Chinese medicine as opposed to the Ayurvedic approach, the Indian traditional medicine that we use in conjunction with other yoga. But it does have very similar ideas like the chakras. Chakras are 7 nexuses of energy in the body, going along the back line of the body. And each of them correspond to different organs and mean different things. And as we're moving energy through our body and through those areas, there are different meditations that we can do for each. So if we're starting at the lowest chakra, which is in the sacrum, the very lowest part of the back, our meditation is I'm safe and stable. It's the chakra of having our basic needs met, moving up to the second chakra, that is the kidneys and the bladder. The meditation can be I feel. This is where all of our emotions come from. For the third chakra, which is into the stomach, our fire, our meditation can be I do, is a chakra of action. The fourth chakra is into the heart. Meditation there can be I love, which is our center of balance and compassion. Let's move up slowly, bring the hips back a little bit. Let's come to our hands again, to our tabletop, and move side to side. Good option here is coming through a little cat-cow. So lifting the mid-back, pressing through the hands, and then letting the belly fall down. Whatever way you need to help you with your back, get things back to where they were. The fifth chakra is in the throat. It is our center of communication. The meditation there can be I speak or I communicate. The sixth chakra is in the center of the forehead, and it corresponds with vision and insight. The meditation can be I see. Seventh chakra is at the crown of the head, basically above the head, and that's our center of dreaming, and also critical thinking. So the meditation there could be, I understand. That is all of our chakras. All right, we're going to go from here to a supported bridge pose. So we're going to bring the legs back in front of us. We're going to take one block and we're going to place it under our sacrum. Most of you will be familiar with this one from our regular classes. So taking the block and placing it under the sacrum, if the sides are a little sharp, we can put a blanket underneath us. If we want to go a little higher, we can come to the second level of the block. We need that extra length. But the feet are going to be basically flat on the mat for our bridge pose. And we're going to let our front body open up in this pose. Let gravity work for us. Yeah, for me, the second level is just about perfect. Depends on what you need out of this pose. Very gentle inversion. Using very minimal muscle here. Some of these poses certainly more gentle than others. All of them are beneficial. Thinking in this pose about gathering our energy and then opening ourselves up to what the world is going to offer us this spring to move into that season of renewal, growth. Continuing to let the front body open. Feeling the benefits of this gentle inversion. Blood coming to the head, the brain. when we talk about yin, what is that exactly? There are different energies in traditional Chinese medicine described as yin and yang. And I'm sure you've seen the yin yang symbol before. It's the black fish and the white fish in a circle. And what that represents is, at the very base level, the sunny side of the mountain, basically, and the shady side of the mountain. So the sunny side of the mountain is the yang, which is the daytime, traditionally masculine force, traditionally more active, we're building more heat. So when we do a yang practice, that would be more of our vinyasa style, moving and pushing things. On the yin side of things, that is traditionally more feminine oriented. It is cooler. It equates with the evening, the night, and the moon as opposed to the sun. These energies are not at odds. They complement each other, and in fact, they could not exist without one another. And there is no such thing as pure yin or pure yang. And that's represented in the yin yang symbol because each fish has a drop of the opposite color for its eye. So it's showing that there's always a little bit of yang in the yin and yin in the yang. Slowly remove the block, bring our hips down very gently. And we're going to take our knees into our chest and move side to side. Draw them in as much as you need. Start to release the hips. And when we're feeling that we're ready, we can take our feet down to the mat, bring them close together. Our next pose is going to be reclined butterfly or reclined bound angle. So we're going to let our knees fall out to the sides, keep our feet together. And then we have an option of bringing our hands up overhead. If this is a little too much on the shoulders to leave them up there for a while, we can take a block and put it underneath our hands, if that will help.
Hands up over our head, how?
So like we can join our hands. So like, it's sort of like we look like a figure eight. And then the elbows are coming out to the side. If you need blocks underneath your knees on either side to support because you're having pain, or under your elbows, you could do either of those or both. So most of you have probably done poses like this, or exactly like this, in our yoga classes, especially if you've done a class with me. But the focus is a little different here. Trying to chase that sensation a little bit. It is an active practice, but it's a more subtle practice. you're starting to feel some pain to the shoulders or any tingling in your hands or arms, take your arms down a little bit more. If you need that extra space, maybe bring the elbows down a little bit and you can come to kind of like a goal post arms. That's feeling good, better than hands joined above your head. We're very, very flexible into the hips and we need more. We can put a block under the sacrum for this one, but only if we really need it. A few more breaths in this pose. Slowly bring the knees together. We'll take our windshield wipers again with the knees going side to side. All right, our next pose is cat pulling its tail, which may be new to most of you. So we're gonna come to our left side. I'm gonna be on my left elbow. And my legs are gonna be kind of stacked as I'm on my side. And we're gonna work on here, and we can have, by the way, our strap with us if we like. So that may help with that front leg. Now that we're on our left side, we're going to take our right leg and bring it forward off the mat. And we can take our strap and put it around the bottom of that foot. From here, we're going to start to work the left leg back. And when we're feeling like we're in a good position, we can come down onto our side, not up on our elbow, and then cradle our head. So it's a little tricky to get into, but once you start feeling it, you'll understand. So if I've got my strap on my right leg, I'm going to hold that with my left hand. I'm going to take my right hand, reach behind for my left toes. This is where it gets a little tricky. And I'm going to create some tension and pull that knee back. What we can do here as well is have a block underneath the head. Should have mentioned to have the block near you.
Hold up your right.
What's that?
Hold up your right.
Yeah, you could do that. And yeah, so if you can't reach that foot, that's okay. If you guys need any help, I'm sorry.
Your left foot can be in the air.
It doesn't have to be, no, whatever is comfortable. Yeah, so this is one that's a little tricky to get into, but once you start feeling it, you're going to understand this pose, and it hits so many different areas. It's one of my favorite poses.
The
Yes.
top part of your body is pulling or twisting
So
or where's this part?
your torso,
Yeah.
you're lying on your side. Your shoulders are
That's
there.
just your left.
Yeah, yes, you're lying on your left side for this pose. So yeah, I would, if you need a bolster or a block under your head for this to make that more comfortable.
And we're feeling this where?
So lots of places. So we're gonna, so the back of that top leg, that right leg, we're extending there. And then because we've got our right hand grabbing back behind for that left foot, we've got some work into the right shoulder, right? And then we're also feeling this into our hip flexor of the left leg. So again, it seems complex, but once you start to understand where we feel this in the pose and what we're getting here, you'll start to get it. So we can use that strap to pull a little tighter with the left hand. We need that leg to go up a little further. But remember, this is yin, right? We're not trying to work a lot of strength here. Can I grab a bolster or something for some of you that have your head down on the mat? Maybe you need a bolster? No? Okay.
Are we supposed to be dropping this?
So again, it's however you're feeling it into your body. So the sensations should be kind of as described. So we have the work into the back of that top leg, so the right leg, all the way back through the hip. So if we feel like we need to be dropping that back a little more, and as the shoulder comes back, taking whatever stretch or movement we need to there. So this pose, these poses are for you. As with the other poses, working on making friends with this pose, seeing where we need to make adjustments. You kind of get the idea of the cat pulling its tail, why it's called that. And because this is yin, we want to make sure that we're not actively pulling too hard on that strap, or that we're actively pulling too hard on that left leg. Want to be relaxed. Again, about another 20 seconds on the side. Keep breathing. Start to release. You can let go of that strap and bring the legs closer together, bring the feet closer together. Come to the back and take some windshield wipers. It's kind of our catch-all today for our digestive pose because we're doing a lot of hip work here. Then we're going to come to the other side. So let's roll over to our right side this time. Stay up on our elbow like before. And then with our strap, bringing it to the left foot. Taking that strap to the right hand as we lay down, creating a little tension there. And then dropping the left hand back, holding on to the right foot, maybe drawing the knee back a little bit. And then, at least for me, I need some support under the head. So block there is fine for me, but may want to blanket or bolster. Nice, yeah. My friend who is a Yin Yoga instructor calls this the kitchen sink pose because it does a little bit of everything. I'm going to read a little bit from Insight Yoga. by Sarah Powers, and she's actually the person who coined the term Yin Yoga. She wasn't the creator of the system, but that's what she coined it as. And I just love this explanation. We can always go back to kind of the beginning and find our definitions of yoga and why we practice. So I thought this was very well written. So she says, what is yoga? Yoga can be understood as a set of behaviors that develops a holistic experience of the body, heart, and mind. It is a process of fully inhabiting ourselves and our life in a radically engaging and inquisitive way. Through this training, we develop a healthy capacity to literally take up residence in our bodies and minds, which can then lead us into simple presence. Presence is a quality of being that is open and aware. This mind-body presence serves as the ground for compassion and wisdom to emerge within us. Although there are many branches of yoga, the philosophy can be defined as joining or yoking, which is the translation of yoga, of the many seemingly opposite layers of our being: mind and body, inner and outer, activity, receptivity, subject with object, the result of which is a non-dual or inclusive state of mind in which we're able to experience the challenging dualities of life without falling into dualism. Dualism is a state of mind where we sever a piece of experience from the integral whole and subsequently see it as independent and separate. The fruition of a committed yoga practice is the capacity to deeply relax the inner struggles with life's paradoxes. Someone who is steeped in yoga is better able to tolerate the extremes of heat or cold, agility or immobility, sadness or joy, free from psychological confusion, resistance, or struggle. A yoga practitioner learns to question the assumption that we're separate from what we experience and must therefore strive to accumulate and hold on to that which is pleasant and comfortable, while seeking to avoid and rid ourselves of that which is unpleasant, difficult, or threatening. Let's start to come out of this pose and come back to our windshield wipers. Move slow. Honor your body. I'll read this last paragraph here while you're taking your movement. The path of yoga, although diverse, is a set of practices that moves us out of our comfort zones in our bodies and minds, engendering the possibility of broadening our capacity for connection and inclusion. This process becomes possible by learning to dwell inside our bodies and minds with kind yet keen observance, coupled with intimate participation. We learn to be fully engaged in feeling our bodies and mental states in various poses and contemplations, as well as to observe how we're responding to our moment-to-moment experience as it unfolds. The yoga practice is therefore an in-depth training in participatory observation and enhancement of the body, heart, and mind. It's like a lot of words, but to me that means a lot about what yoga is and what it can be for us. All right, we're going to finish up with our last pose, which is going to be legs up the wall. So two options here. We can physically go to the wall and put our legs up the wall, or we can stay where we are and use a block under the sacrum, and the legs are going to be up in the air, basically. So we're going to lift like this using that block as a support, and then hold from here. And the hands can be overhead if we need that little extra stretch. So there is going to be a little muscle used, no yang, if we're freestanding and we're using our block. And again, if we need to make that more comfortable, we can put a blanket over it or use a bolster instead, if that's not comfortable. We are coming to the wall. We'll find an open space, slide next to the wall at our side, and then lie down. Bring our legs up and kind of spin a little bit. And then work on bringing our legs straight and then out to the sides as much as is necessary. Feel a good stretch. We're against the wall. This is, again, another very much surrender pose where we are relaxing and letting gravity do the work. This is working a lot of the same areas as our downward facing dog. Very nice, gentle inversion. And if we're kind of freestanding, find your position and try to stay static and use your breath here. Since this is our last pose, and normally we would do Shavasana after this, we'll try to work on our relaxing as much as we can in this pose. Releasing all the work that we've done throughout this practice. We can have our mantra here, I am balanced. Feeling at peace. I'm feeling this time for renewal and rebirth. Noticing nature with its vibrant colors, new life coming into being, coming out of our hibernation. Tapping into the element of wood, which, as we said, represents movement, expansion, activity, change. It's the home of new ideas, new thoughts, transformation, and hope. About 30 more seconds in this pose. Start to release So we can bring our legs down if we're freestanding and remove our bolster or block. We're on the wall, dropping our legs slowly to the side. We can lie on our side for a moment. Deepen our breathing. And then when we're ready, after we've had some time, we're going to come up to a seated position, sit tall. We're going to close out our class with vibrating the sound of Om. Make sure we have good posture here. Our hands can be on our knees. Take a mudra if you like, something that's meaningful to you. And we're going to let go of the breath that we have. Take a deep breath in and then say Om. Thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed our Yin practice and that you will continue on with Yin, either with me or another method. I will endeavor, if you guys did like this, to do more Yin classes so we can offer something like this in our studio. I think it's something that we don't have today. So I'll be here to answer questions. I've got some books that I bought that are really great Yin books, some of them from the people who created the practice. You can take a look at them if you like. But otherwise, I will see you next time. Namaste.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you guys.
That was enjoyable.
Good. And you're the one who said it was torturous.
Well, I could have, but you know, you had one of my favorite courses, Dragon.
Right.
Because I had to write one.
Bye, folks online. We'll see you soon.